to item H4, English Language Development Program.
Yes, so the purpose of this item is to provide the board with the update on our ELL program, our English Language Learner Program, the program goals of the English Language Development or ELD test results, ELL services, ELAC recommendations, challenges, and strengths will be shared. Tonight we have Anna Creta Allen here, our Educational Services Director, and also Kim Miller, who is our ELD Coordinator, here to give you that overview of the program.
Thank you.
And I also need to note that we see our teacher on special assignment, Sharice Colon, our coach, here, and don't know if she's here for part of the presentation or is a
She's supportive.
support. There you go. All right. Just wanted to acknowledge your presence here. Thank you very much.
Hi. So I wanted to kind of go over some of the same things I went over last time I was here and update you on some new things. So the major goals of our English Learner Program is to develop proficiency in English and to provide English learners access to the core curriculum. These are our English learners by CELT scores. You can see we have the highest number in kindergarten, and as they move up through the grade levels, they progress and hopefully are reclassified within 5 to 6 years. There are a few students that are at the high school. Some of those students have come to our district at the high school level and are newcomers, and others are long-term English learners. As of this year, we have, we have 6 long-term English learners at Anna Yates, and there are 8 long-term English learners at ESS. And right now, according to our master plan and what we attempt to provide is we give English learners ELD until they are reclassified as being fluent in English, and then once they are reclassified, we have to monitor them for 2 years. And we monitor them on CST, by their CELT level, and then also on their benchmark assessments to make sure they're making adequate progress. Okay. Right now, to make sure that all English learners are receiving ELD, we do ELD learning walks, myself and 2 other teachers, and usually Ms. Colon, and sometimes administrators or other staff. We go through the classrooms and look for evidence of instructional strategies that are proven effective for English learners, and that is having a language objective for the content that they're teaching, using response frames, teaching explicit academic vocabulary, encouraging students to speak and write in complete sentences, and also modeling those complete sentences for the students, and having structured student talk opportunities. And as you can see over the years, this is our last one. October 23rd was our last learning walk. We've made some good gains. We were at 100% with teachers using response frames this time, and at 93% with complete sentences and structured student talk opportunities. And what's really nice about this is that we started in 2011, but many of these things we're seeing in the Common Core now with the listening and speaking standards. So we're already ready to go into the Common Core with the listening and speaking standards. Last year, at the end of the year, I think Dr. Lindo shared some recommendations that the DLAC made at the end of last year. The DLAC would really like to see more tutoring and after-school programs, summer school, additional homework help, and intervention programs for English learners. Additionally, professional development for teachers in supporting the English learners in the classrooms. They were hoping that a Spanish-speaking secretary could be hired at Anna Yates when they were hiring last year, and that to have more consistent Spanish language translation. Right now, we have about 18% Spanish speakers at Anna Yates, and we need to do a better job of communicating in Spanish. And then also parent education. English classes for parents, parenting classes, and nutrition, cooking, those types of classes.
Do we have only a DLAC, or does each site have an ELAC?
Well, now with the local control funding formula, it was because we didn't have any carryover in funds, and we actually didn't even have any Title III funds last year, we don't have an ELAC for each school site. We've switched to just having a DLAC. And that is mostly so that the DLAC then can be a part of the local control accountability plan.
Well,
And also because we don't have very many students at the high school. There's only 8 English learners, so we're not required to have an ELAC at that site.
what's the minimum requirement for
I think
having
it's
an ELAC?
20.
20 students.
What does DLAC stand for?
So a DLAC is the
The
District
district, yeah.
Learner Advisory Committee, and an ELAC is
The
just
English Learner, yeah.
Advisory Committee. It's a site level.
So last year, and we used to combine ELAC and DLAC because we are so small, and we didn't get enough turnout from the high school's parents. Now that we've combined it just to calling it DLAC, we actually had more parents at our initial meeting from the high school. So I don't know best practices, but we are still having parent meetings around English learners, and we are following what's required of the DLAC, and we hope to be a part of the LCAP.
Yeah, the LCFF doesn't expects that if we have an ELACs, that they have input into the LCAP,
Yeah.
and if we have a DLAC, that they have input into the
Yeah.
So I guess I didn't follow your comment about we change practice to accommodate the LCAP, but
I'm sorry, we changed,
your comment that
Well,
we changed our
because-
practice, because the
DLACs
LCAP
were
is
still
whatever-
required, but the ELACs weren't required anymore under LCAP unless you had carryover funds from the previous school year.
I guess I would dispute that. I mean,
Okay.
yeah,
That
so-
was what was told to me by ACOE.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's a recommendation still to continue with ELACs from Californians Together.
Mm-hmm.
But because our district is so small and we used to kind of run it as an ELAC, DLAC anyway, we just kind of switched to calling it a DLAC because it's just Anna Yates parents, including, you know what I'm saying? That
Yeah,
it's the
whatever-
sites combined, yeah.
Whatever we can,
Yeah.
participation we can get from the high
So
school
I could go back
parents.
to calling it DLAC, ELAC,
Mm-hmm.
but mostly we're kind of trying to make some general recommendations as a district. And we're thinking as we go to the K-12 campus, that's going to be the case also.
I guess whatever we call it, I would want the, first of all, I think that some of the requirements for having an ELAC and a DLAC come from federal law.
Yeah.
You say, we don't get Title III fund, but we could in the future.
Well, we have Title III funds, and we are fulfilling the requirements for that Title III accountability. It's not that we're not fulfilling the requirements.
But to get back to my main point is, whatever we call it, I think that the committee of parents should feel empowered also to be making suggestions about what Anna Yates needs in terms of improving its instruction for ELs at Anna Yates.
Yeah.
As well as having sort of the dual mindset of, and what should we as a district be doing?
And I would say that the recommendations from last year were mostly for Anna Yates, because it was mostly Anna Yates parents. This year, we had a few parents from the ESS attend the first meeting. And so I believe they understand that. Our 2 chairs for DLAC that were submitted to ACOE and to the state are both Anna Yates parents.
Okay, so I guess I'm requesting that you, as the staff administrator of that process, make sure they understand that
Okay.
they should be thinking of what do we need here at Annie Yates and what do we need as a district.
At the high school, yeah. And I think, yeah,
Great.
okay.
And just one final point for the board mostly is just to call attention to the fact that the LCFF law does specifically say that the district needs to consult with the DLAC and get their feedback on what should go into our LCAP, and specifically says if we get comments from the DLAC, maybe the ELAC too, but certainly the DLAC, that the superintendent has to respond in writing to comments from the DLAC. So they do hold a specific objective or purpose within the structure.
The only question I had, how many parents do we have on the DLAC committee?
So we have, at the last meeting, there were, I don't think I have the roll, but I think,
Right.
yeah. At the last meeting, there were approximately 10 parents. Yeah. 3 of those parents were from the high school, and the rest were from Anna Yates.
Thank you.
And we have 2 parents that are sharing the chairperson position. And I submitted their names for training because Californians Together was providing training for parents that are chairing DLAC this year.
And who are our parent chairs?
Elizabeth Avila, right there.
Okay.
She's one.
Excellent.
And Veronica Mendoza.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're both
That's
parents.
good turnout for
Yeah.
this district.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
And we found that I try to have the meetings in the morning, and that's really helped attendance because we get them when they're dropping off their kids, and then they come to the meeting. So that's worked out. So some of the changes that have been made and some of the strengths of our program right now is that we're doing the learning walk still, and we're seeing progress in the teaching strategies being implemented. We have identified our long-term English learners at Anna Yates and at the high school, and we developed catch-up plans for those students. This year, we're implementing a research-based long-term English learner intervention at Anna Yates. I'm working with all the students that are in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to improve their academic listening, speaking, and writing skills. And then we're also implementing a research-based kindergarten intervention at Anna Yates this year. I'm doing a supplementary program that's after school for kindergartners 3 days a week, and it's for English learners. Included in that program, I'm also working with some other struggling English learners throughout the grades at Anna Yates, but the primary focus is to provide supplemental intervention for kindergarten students. And I'm hoping to see good results from that. We're still working on providing more consistent ELD instruction, especially at the high school. The high school students, there's very few of them, and so it's hard to have a separate class. There is some push-in support, but it needs to be more fleshed out and developed. We need to work on SUDAI strategies and training for teachers. And then the challenge is always with English learners is they need support for 5 to 7 years to become fully fluent in English. And so this is also based on the recommendation by Californians Together is that English learners can't be forgotten in the Common Core. The Common Core raises the stakes for everyone, especially around the language in the nonfiction texts and the speaking standards and listening and the reading and writing with showing evidence. So we need to make sure that we're providing support for our English learners and giving teachers professional development around how to scaffold for the English learners and to provide extra support. And I don't know if anybody has more questions.
So the thing that sort of jumps out at me is and it jumped out at me last February when we spoke, is that we seem to be doing a reasonable job with ELD, English Language Development Instruction, which is the focus on getting our students to, speak and read and listen academic English. But it really is a separate discipline almost, the academic content instruction. As SUDAI stands for Specially Designed Academic Instruction in English.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it is, I know you appreciate the...
Very much
Yeah.
appreciate it.
The federal law from the Supreme Court to the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Ed to the California Department, very clear in the case law on this that we have a dual obligation to teach English and to access the core content. And there are different ways to do that. You can use bilingual instruction and simultaneous access. You can teach English first and later come in with the content. You can SUDAI is sort of a California-developed approach that other states have followed, which is this sort of using scaffolding language, more simple language, but to convey the same complex kind of content. It doesn't seem, as you say, that we are doing SUDAI consistently, in some cases not at all.
Yeah.
So it seems like we're not delivering on half of our obligation here in some respects. So how how can we be doing a better job of that? What are the additional personnel or materials or professional development or administrative support that we need to make that happen?
Well, I think it probably needs to be kind of always included in any professional development we do, whether that be around mathematics curriculum or the Common Core in mathematics or the Common Core in ELA, or the next generation science standards, but it needs to be included. And those methods always have to be thought about, and English learners always have to be included in any of the PD that we do. I think that keeping it separate creates some of the problems, although you can't say we teach ELD all day. It has to be a separate program, but those strategies could be used all day. And those strategies would help all of our learners, and we have a 74% English learner and low free and reduced lunch population. So it's not like those strategies would be effective for all of our students. So I think we just have to be more cognizant of including those strategies when we're doing our professional development.
Well, the reality is that it is, for the most part, the same teacher, particularly at the elementary levels, who are delivering the ELD and the academic content.
Well, I work with the beginning and early intermediate, and then those stuck intermediate English learners. I do a pull-out program with them. Okay. And so the teachers are
on ELD?
Yes, just ELD.
Yeah, right.
And the teachers are expected to work with them at with those higher level students that stay in their class, and that's why we do the learning walks, to make sure that they're teaching the language with those higher level English learners.
So how do the lower level English learners, and by lower I mean lower CELT scores more, how do they get SEDI?
Well, they get SEDI through
get
their classroom.
content?
Yeah, you're right. It's the classroom teachers with the SEDI. Is that what your clarification is?
Yes, so the academic, so you're right.
Yeah.
You correct me that you're pulling out on the ELD for the low to mid.
Yeah.
But on the higher level performers, they're getting both ELD and SEDI from their
Hopefully all students.
Teacher.
That's the goal, is that all students are getting both ELD and SEDI,
right.
because they all need
So
it.
maybe my biggest concern is really with the low to intermediate EL students. How are they getting SEDI?
In their classrooms.
Yes. So are we doing enough to support their teachers?
No, I think
to make sure the checking that they're giving SEDI, that they're structuring scaffolding?
I think that's one area that we could really improve in, and that's what I mean, is that as we're unrolling the Common Core, and as we're also the new ELD standards will come into effect, that we need to take all of that into account and to make sure we're incorporating the SEDI standards along with those, the SEDI strategies along with the standards.
Can you go back to the 5th slide with walkthrough
maybe.
data on it?
No. How do I go back?
It's back button.
Okay, right. How do I do it?
It's on Mark.
I can't hear anyone.
We get the IT guys.
Or just mumble.
You call
IT support.
Call the IT support guy.
Call Ryan at home. Okay. So now, okay. Oh, it's this one. Okay. So which one did you want to go to?
The next one, I think.
The next one.
The walkthrough data.
Okay.
Previous.
Back. Thanks.
There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that data is reporting on ELD sort of strategy uses.
Yeah, in the classrooms.
As observed. And that should we be doing similar walkthroughs on SEDI strategies and mapping how well that...
Yes, but I think that teachers also need professional development prior to.
Okay.
And it might not... So because all teachers are CLAD certified or certificated, and because they're probably, a lot of them have had GLAD training in the past, or guided language acquisition design, is that what it is? I think they've had the training a long time ago. So some of it could be a refresher, but then we also have some teachers that may not be familiar with some of the strategies. So I think, professional development would be in order, and then we could choose some strategies and do a SEDI learning walk. It could be either.
So I think that's right, and I guess that I would request that we, consciously implement some SEDI professional development, and that we see in your next presentation evidence that that's happened, and that a similar kind of learning walk on SEDI strategies has, at least to establish a baseline, has taken place.
Yeah, okay.
There's one other point that I wanted to make on that. So thank you, Ms. Miller, for this presentation. The other point that I wanted to make around the recommendations for 1213 had to do with the secretary in the front office. So we did post the position, as a Spanish-speaking. As an option, as preferred, but we weren't able to have any candidates that fit that category. But what we did do was we increased the number of hours for translation and support in the front office. So just so that you know that it hasn't been completely forgotten, but that there.
So what does that mean?
Ms. Hernandez has been given additional hours.
Okay.
So
Great.
Yeah.
And how are we doing in terms of the translation of documents, which was also one of the DLAC's recommendations?
I think that some things get translated. I don't see everything that goes out from the school office or from the district. We do have the report cards translated into Spanish, Case 6.
You mean the SARCs?
No, actually, I'm talking about the actual
student
report cards.
Okay, good.
So there are some documents that are translated, and student and teachers use Ms. Hernandez when they need translation for their conferences or for report card comments. And then also if parents need help with the homework, translating homework, she does that. I can't honestly say how many letters go out that are translated into Spanish from the school office.
Yeah. So
I'm not sure.
What is our process for determining what's a material document, which is the standard in the Ed Code?
Currently, it's my understanding, I know there are some documents that the sites put out that are generally communicated in Spanish. Also, they do translation there, but all of our required legal documents are put out in Spanish as well as English.
Is our SARC, are our SARCs translated?
I do not believe so. I can check our website on that. I'll get back to you on that.
I should know that, but they should be if they're not. Those.
Come on,
Ms. Dunn?
come on up.
Come on.
Dunn, please.
Get the question.
You might be wondering why I'm standing up here. I've been working with Miss Miller and very proud to, as well as Miss Elizabeth. One of the things that we found out is that we needed to communicate a lot more with our Spanish-speaking parents and be very, very mindful of it. So what we've been doing is working with the two front offices. We've been working with Miss Juana Hernandez. I've been looking at with Ryan, different processes that we might have with our robocall to make sure that we always send out all of our information in both Spanish and English, and we're working on, and people are becoming more mindful of doing it. We got a little lazy and didn't, but now we are. All the legal documents, yes, but sometimes if the game is coming or whatever, because as I talked to parents at parent orientation, that was one of the things that they really wanted to make sure that they heard everything. We also are working with our translating machine, making sure that's there so that parents want to talk to each other while we're at a meeting, like at the PTO. We're trying to get those mechanisms worked up so that we can mindfully make sure that we communicate in languages that are indicative of the folks who are coming to hear the information from there. One of the things I also found, I work with the Family Resource Center and Ms. Wanda Hundley. We have been actively going to DLAC meetings, talking to parents, having them come over. They're going to come over and have meetings at the Family Resource Center, and we bring information to them both in Spanish and English, and Ms. Hundley always translates all of her classes in Spanish and English, just so that we can make sure that people who want to take advantage of our services and resources do. So it's an ongoing process. It's something that we're working toward. We hopefully will have more systems that are easier for everybody to use, but we are keenly aware that we have not, but we are, and we're getting better at it.
The other thing that's being done as well is for the PTO and other parent meetings, there are student translators at the high school, so that are helping the parents. So, and the students are receiving community service credits for doing that translation, and that's really nice to see as well.
Okay, yeah, I do understand we have Ms. Hernandez and she helps. We don't get always all the information in Spanish, so it will help. What we really want is a secretary,
Right.
because a lot of parents in our meetings were complaining that if something happened to the children,
Right.
should they tell them?
Right.
No, don't get sick, wait until Ms. Hernandez is here so she can
Right. It's
let
too
us
late
know or
if it's an
translate.
emergency.
So
Yeah.
we really will appreciate it if we can have a bilingual Spanish English secretary, and yeah, that's
I mean,
helpful.
I hear
Good
you,
feedback.
and I hear our superintendent, and I think the only thing that kind of, I would say, I don't want to say baffled, but concern is that the region that we live in is a very diverse area, and we should, I'm not saying we're not trying, but we should be able to find someone who can speak Spanish in this area to be able to communicate to our parents. So I'll just leave it at that.
thank you.
We have, I just wanted to, I don't want to leave this comment at all, but I do want to respect that. I have a student board member who would like to make a comment, so I just don't want to lose that while she can hold on to it, because things leave my mind easily, so.
Yeah, I had an experience at NAH a couple weeks, on the 31st of October, with a child who she didn't really speak a lot of English, and she needed help. And the fact that I couldn't help her like fully really bugged me. So I was wondering if, like, I noticed on your next slide, you said something about after-school programs and tutoring, and for the child to come up to me instead of an adult, I thought that was very helpful. And not all children are would feel comfortable coming to an adult, so they'll come to an older person. I think having bilingual students to help the younger ones, to motivate them and help them learn English would help a lot, because not everyone can learn a different language, especially I am trying. And yes, and I just think that's something very important for the students to learn, especially during your after-school programs and tutoring. It would be helpful to have maybe the high schoolers or someone who is not a lot older than them or an adult yet, but like a teenager or an older child. Yes, a mentor to motivate the child and let them know that they can go through it alone if there's someone who can help. That's great.
Good comment.
I love when young people refer to themselves as an older person. I love that. I think that's great. You know, I mean, I'm just, from my standpoint, it would be, because I can think of ideas and they're just ideas. I'm an idea person, so watch out. But I'm just thinking if there was a way, if there's a school that, locally that probably could, our site, Annie Yates, could be a location where we have an intern for, we're the hub of interns. I'm just curious if there is a program where we can have an intern that could be on site for Annie Yates during that, that period, and they get credit. But that's just an idea. I just throw that out.
For an after-school program? Is that what you mean?
No, for an actual person that's of help for the district or for the school site, to have someone there at the school site, not secretary, but whatever role that they could play, but will be available for,
So Ms. Hernandez is our parent liaison. That's what she's called. And so she's there Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 1 to 4.
someone who's there.
Yeah,
full
so
on.
she's there 3 afternoons a week.
Yeah, but and just to note that I think this is a significant thing that should come back to the board really soon about a solution, because I do absolutely agree. I was a student, as I said earlier, I was a student here at Emeryville when the population was probably that much more greater, but the diversity of languages was that much higher as well. And I think the more, that we do proactively, and as a district, we have to be, just like you had listed school board meetings, I mean, we have to be that much more thoughtful about highlighting the fact that that's our obligation. So I think it will be helpful for me, and I don't know if I speak for all board members, but to have a report back on what solutions we could put in play, to have someone there 5 5 days a week. If not that one person can do it, but how do we ensure that we're giving our best? And it may not be a secretary. Maybe the pool is just what it is, but I think if there's some creative ways to ensure that parents have that, that confidence that there's somebody who's going to be there, I think it's significant that we need to monitor it. So I just throw it out.
I mean, for me, this is the epiphany of equity. I mean, if we're right, it typifies equity. We're going to talk about equity, and we have students who need these services, then, we need to be providing it for them and finding ways to do that.
Yes, as you said, as parents, we want to feel secure that we're leaving our child in good hands, and they're going to be taken care of.
Right.
And and we can receive the call in any language we do speak. So, thank you so much.
Ms. Dunn, did you say that Wanda Hunley is bilingual, or how does she deliver her classes in Spanish?
She's not bilingual, but she has access to people who do speak Spanish. And she's with what she did. She goes to
You have to speak to the mic that you're
I'm hot
so that
too,
you're.
And while she's coming up, Member Adfeld, I just want to thank you for making sure that this gets on the agenda and bringing this subject up and really asking the hard questions. I thank you.
Okay. Ms. Hunley does not speak Spanish. However, she does have access to people who do, but a lot of our notifications and information she gives to Ms. Hernandez to make sure it goes out correctly and ahead of time in both English and Spanish, as well as people from Wellness. We've been working consciously on doing that so that we can make sure that people understand what's going on. Most of the meetings that we've had a few Spanish-speaking parents, but we'd like to increase it. And we'd also like to, when I first heard about this, I talked to, oh Lord, what is that woman's name? She's a Spanish teacher at the high school. She held the Spanish club, Ms. Critchlow. And she's been, and as well as Ms. Collins, have been getting the students to come and do some translations at different meetings. So we utilize them for service hours. And when I finally get some money, maybe I'll help them to give them a stipend, but right now it's service hours so that we can do that. But in terms of a formal person who speaks Spanish, no, but we try our very best to make sure that we have somebody there who can help out. That's why with the translation machine, I just had it refurbished. Ryan's looking at it, making sure it runs so that we can actually have somebody sit there and put on the headphones and go for it.
Good, because we're going to need that for the LCAP community meetings.
I helped out.
Yeah,
I know.
appreciate it.
Yeah, having a flash, excuse me.
Is it, well, anyway, I'm going to let Member Simon speak, and just one more point. So I've heard that I think we want to report back on how we're going to provide support for translation or some kind of at least at Annie Yates during the, and a report back on when we're going to be doing and what kind of professional development on SEDAI and how we're going to get ready for walkthrough. So those are kind of the three things that I've heard we want back.
And you are asking me to report back on that?
I guess I'm asking,
Okay.
yes, you
Okay.
to figure out with the superintendent.
Okay.
When
Okay.
I can do.
Well, and our next DLAC meeting is in January, and we're planning on doing the needs assessment to help inform for the LCAP to kind of
Okay.
get the parents are saying they need.
Okay, and one suggestion I'll just throw out to figure out is, maybe it's just a matter of having Ms. Hernandez on the day she's not there on call, if not her, someone on call that we can call if there is an emergency or a student who needs some help in the office, that we can have some emergency translation.
An on-call system would be best because there is a lot of downtime. I mean,
Right.
to actually hire someone to be there for when it's needed, it's tricky, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
So that's a good suggestion, but figuring out a way that we can call someone. Yeah.
I just wanted to, so Spanish is one of the languages in our school. We also have Punjabi, and we have, I believe, Arabic. We have a
Spanish,
range
yeah.
of languages spoken. I'm wondering if it's in keeping with our Member Dwin's comment about ensuring equity. Does it make sense for us to have, as a district policy, a policy of maintaining a language skills library at each site, so that as a matter of policy, we find out which of our staff speak which languages, so that the office has the information, and so that we can establish an on-call process regardless of language, so that if Ms. Williams has a student who comes up to her and you can't translate, you can always go to the office and get the list of the 2, 3, 4, 5, or however many adults who can translate.
We could do that for some of the languages. We definitely have students where no one on staff speaks that language. We have Arabic speakers. Right now, as far as I know, there's no one on staff that speaks Arabic. We also have Vietnamese and French and Tagalog and Korean. So it's definitely more than we could provide for, but those populations are also very small at our school, and many of those parents are bilingual, so it's not as much of an issue. There's only so many parents that ask to be communicated in their primary language, or that don't have skills sufficient enough to understand the documentation, and the only population that we are required to translate documents for by law is our Spanish-speaking population.
No, I
Yeah.
completely understand, and very reasonable.
Yeah.
I guess the policy question that I have is, since we strive to make education access to everybody, as a policy, we don't necessarily ask the question of what languages do you speak. So we could have teachers who we don't know they speak
that's true. That's
Korean,
true. Yeah.
or they, we did have an Arabic-speaking teacher here for a long time. So, I guess the question is whether or not district staff thinks it's reasonable to come back to us with a policy that the district will maintain. Whenever we hire somebody, we're going to just ask, what languages do you speak, and we'll keep that information in the office.
So we do have that on the application, so there's a place where they...
So to the degree we already have the information, I guess you could do it administratively, but quite frankly, we've brought this up a number of times over the years. I'm wondering if we just have a board policy so that it gets put into standard practice, to just keep track of it, and then that's something that could be handed out at the beginning of the year to parents, just so that they know. And it opens the doors, and I don't know if there's any personnel reasons why you couldn't give out a list of who speaks what languages, but, and I don't mean to turn it into a policy discussion tonight. I just wanted to raise the idea and that it might be worth coming back to the board with a proposal for a policy. I would certainly support it. I'm sure my colleagues will want to discuss it. But it becomes a way that we can be more language friendly, and to the extent when we're hiring, I don't know if it makes sense to, when we're hiring, to look for parents who speak the languages that are not spoken here.
So
or,
maybe
or teachers or staff that speak the languages. So I wanted to put it out as a policy proposal, and I understand the staff needs to work out the details of these things.
So I think I have a couple of things that I'm thinking about with this. I'm wondering if this isn't something that, in terms of gathering data as part of the needs assessment, that we could maybe take a look at in January, and also if this is something that the full board is giving direction to beyond, our required languages. If this is something you want us to come back and take a look at, we could do that at that time. So I think, and to combine it with the needs assessment and the LCAP conversation, I think that's I love the idea, the thought of it. I think we'll have to go back and think about the policy piece, if that is something that the full board is interested in us doing.
Well, just for, I think, For me as an individual on the board, I think it would be helpful to have a language discussion. And I don't know what that means. I think we, just in terms of equity as not a question, but I think it kind of bothers me that we don't, but I think it would be valuable for us to look at it, consider where we are now, where our gaps are, and how do we plug those gaps. But I think in terms of, to land a certain place right now, I don't know enough, true enough. But I think it would be helpful to have the conversation about language just in general, because, like I said, I went here and Punjabi was definitely a high. I mean, it was everybody at Emery, and it's always going to be that way, and it's always been that way. But I think it's really about how do we ensure that we're communicating, and maybe it's not a big issue. Maybe we don't know. Maybe it's only one group, one language that we need to address, but we need to know that. So I think it'll be helpful just to have a broader discussion about language.
Yeah, I think Trustee Simon is making a really good point about full inclusion and being an inclusive community and making sure that we are, making sure that we are communicating with folks and everyone as best we can.
And maybe it's a regional thing, that this region, there's these languages are here. I mean, maybe
but it is a bigger conversation, to your point, absolutely. So I'll take this back and we can talk about how we can wrap that into a much bigger conversation about
we have a few
supporting
more,
various language learners.
Go real quick. Maria is going to go first, please.
Okay, I have a suggestion for your own call. I noticed that you said Ms. Hernandez isn't always there. But I also was thinking about how I said earlier about the students and things. We do have students at the high school who have free periods, and instead of calling other people and hiring, I know that's something that you can do. But at the same time, while that's not being done or it's in the process, you guys can have the students and come and help out and translate the ones who are bilingual, especially the ones who speak different languages. Because I have met a couple of students that do not also speak Spanish, because we're also learning Spanish at the high school, but they also do speak Punjabi and Vietnamese and Korean.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of kids, and I just think that's a good suggestion, something to think about. Okay.
Thank you.
Comment.
Member Dwayne?
Just a couple of quick questions. What's the total FTE in the ELD program?
When you say FTE, you're
How many
talking...
teachers? Teachers, I guess you can even include age if you want to.
Well, when you say ELD program?
At Annie Yates.
At Annie Yates, it's all the teachers.
Oh.
Because it's myself, I'm the designated
Like
ELD teacher, and I do pull-out, but then all teachers are required to do ELD and Sandhya.
Okay, all right, okay. And and I guess this is for our CBO, do we have a budget for the ELD?
Well, so it's core. So actually, it's Title I, and any Gen Ed funds are ELD.
Okay.
And then above and beyond would be Title III.
Okay.
Numbers are our challenge.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional board member comments?
Just following up on your comment that we don't get Title III funds, or we didn't last year, but we do this year?
Yeah, well, because of the change this year, but last year, we needed to apply for a consortium in order to get direct funds, because we would receive less than $10,000. And we applied directly, and so we didn't get any, I'm not sure exactly. I think it's migrant funds or LEP funding, Title III.
So we did not?
We did not receive
12,
any funds
13.
last year. So therefore, we aren't required, we don't have our AMAOs this year. We have our AYP, our progress, but we don't have the Title III AMAOs because we didn't get funded last year.
Was that a conscious decision not to apply because it was, it was only going to be $10,000 and?
Well, in the past, we've had trouble with the consortium because we were signed up for a consortium with districts that were very far from us, and it was really hard to work together as a consortium. It was Mountain House in Sunol Glen. I don't even know where they are. And so it just provided a lot of difficulty collaborating with them as a consortium. And Anna, do you want to answer more about that?
Yeah. And so going forward, what are we planning to do?
So basically, you have two parts. You have Part A and you have Part 4. So what we have applied for is what you call LEP, Limited English Proficiency. We can apply for that as an LEA. Last year, when they actually made the transition from CARS, we didn't, for whatever reason, they changed the formula, so we weren't funded that. When we went back again to apply, I believe, although it hasn't come out, Ms. Miller has called CDE. We will receive those funds, and that's what we've received over the past several years, is the LEP money, which is the Limited English Proficiency. So that's Part A of Title III. Part 4 of Title III is the immigrant funding. We don't have enough students to qualify if we apply. So we must apply with the consortium, which the only two districts that we will qualify for is Sunol Glen and Mountain House. And they're very far. That's almost San Joaquin, Wright County. And they're smaller than we are. So to actually do all the paperwork and the legwork that has to go into it, it's almost not worth the funding, because you actually spend that money on administratively alone. So it never actually goes to the students, because we spend all of our time chasing paperwork. So we qualify for Part A, and that's what we will receive.
So are we still in the consortium with, so who are we in the consortium with?
We're not. And they have to agree to be in the consortium with us. We can't force them to do that as well.
So how much are we getting under Part A? Roughly.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I don't know at this time.
Couple tens of thousands or
Thousand.
But we can bring that.
I think it's like I want to say.
It usually has been.
It don't have to be
It usually has been around it's been from 10 to 30,000, from my understanding, depending on the students and the formula that has been
trying to get
used.
a sense of the magnitude.
But I know that they've used a different formula this year, and the last year was a different formula, and for whatever reason, I guess we didn't qualify. So therefore, this year, I actually called CDE to help with the CARS to make sure that when we applied, we would actually receive funding this year.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
That's close enough.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
No, I'm going to do that yet.
That's fine.
Okay.
Any additional questions for Ms. Miller and our DLAC representative? So I think we just look forward to additional reports on this, in this area and the broader topic as well in terms of language. So thank you for the presentation this evening. And I probably, before I forgot to say, are there any public comment to this piece at all? Okay, please.
Yeah, if you have any specific questions that you want me to address at the next presentation, please let me know so that I can address it.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And Ms. Avila, thank you for coming. And I think you heard my comment in conversation with Ms. Miller that we're expecting the DLAC to be thinking both about what Anna Yates needs and what the district needs. And we look forward to your participation in the LCAP process.
Yes.
So we'll now move